good to blame the death on the Avelim. That's not the best way to do it. Right? That's what we learned yesterday. Unless you're trying to tell him that he's such a big tzaddik that he's getting punished for everybody else. And even so, unless you're a shlukish, I'm not sure if I would do that either. The last two words on the first wide line. Let's say something. This Rishlok is showing his Maturgavan. Let's say something. Remember, we were talking earlier about the Avelim, the bracha of the Avelim is Basura. The Ein Avelim in a minion. So we're going to see what these brachas are. Pasach Vomer, Harkei Lagadol, the Ravani Shalom, the great Ravani Shalom, where God Lord in his greatness. Adir Vechosa, the Rev Narois, Mechaya Mason, the Mamoroi, Oysa Gedolos, Ad Ein Cheker, the Floys, Ad Ein Misbar, Orchata Hashem Mechaya Mason. So this is a bracha of Avelim. I don't know that we say such a bracha. I never ever heard of such a bracha, but this is the bracha that we're talking about. The meaning of Avelim and Amen. Omar Lay, he told him again, and remember this whole story was brought down as a raya that if there's panim chadoshes, if there's someone who was never menachem over yet, then you make the bracha again. So therefore, since Rish Lakish wasn't there by the levaya, he only came on the second day of Shiva. He could make these brachas again. So it makes you more miserable. Because since this person did not yet have a chance,
It could be anyone.
that's right. Now let's say something connected to my dear brothers who are worn down and crushed by this terrible Avelis, don't let it take you out. Think about it, but think about death. Death is something that happens to everybody. It's something that's part of the way of the world, and it happens. Everybody dies. So don't get too broken over it. It's the path of the world. Rabbi Mishasu, many have drank this curse of death. Rabbi Mishtu, many will continue to drink this curse of death. Kamishtu Rishonim, just like the people in the past have drunken death. Kach mishtachrein. Achenu, my dear brothers. He's trying to tell them that it's the way of the world, so don't go crazy over it. But they don't want to be over misabel. I hear. So Achenu, my dear brothers, Baal Nechamais Yinachem Eschem. The Baal Nechamais should comfort you. Baruch Menachem Aved. Amar Abaye. Abaye said, I don't understand. Rabbim Shasu, that you say many people in the past have died, Lema. That's agreed, you should say. However, Rabbim Yishtu, to say that many people are going to die, that's a little bit Maltiftach Pelasot. Why would you talk about people that are going to die? Rabbim Yishtu Lema. Mishta Rishonim Lema. But Mishta Achrayim, people are going to die, again, Loi Lema. Don't ever give the Sultan good ideas. Amar Rav Yosef Makar, what do you see in the pasuk? Because the Navi told we were like Sodom, we were compared to Amora. Maya Hadulay, what did the Rebbeinu answer back to the Navi? Shimud Var Hashem Katzine Sodom. Listen to the words of Hashem, the officers of Sodom. So you see, once the Navi brought it up, Shammai went with it. So better you shouldn't say Al Tiftach Pel something. Does the article say which Navi it was? I don't remember which Navi it was. I knew at one point, but I forgot. Was Yeshaya? Okay. Amalei, then Yeshua said, Kum Ema Milsa, Keneged Menachem Aved. Now let's say something nice towards those people who were kind enough to come and do Menachem Aved. Pasach v'yomer, Achenu goyim l'chasodim and negoyim l'chasodim. HaMachzikim b'risa shel Avram Avinu, who was a Baal Chesed. Achenu, my dear brothers, Baal Agmul, the Rebbeinu Shalom, the Baal Agmul, Yishalom lachem gumolchem, should pay you back for your good deeds. Baruch atah Hashem mishalem baruch atah mishalem hagmo. Amalei. Then he said, Kum ema milsa connected Kol Yisrael. Now let's say something nice about all of Klal Yisrael. Pasach v'yomar Ribayin ha'ilamim Pidei Batzel Maleit Hoisha for the shortness of helping us. Amcha Yisrael, your dear nation. Mina dever umina cherev umina visa. So dever is magefa, cherev is death by sword, visa is being pillaged. Shidafa, I think, is a type of wind that dries out the food, messes up the yield. When they Yerakin, it's also some type of weather condition that messes up the yield. What does it say? Shidafa Yerakin. So I think there are winds, dryness, and yellowing. Okay. When we call many perennials and anything that comes to the world, terem nikra batasana. Hashem, don't wait for us to daven. Before we daven already, give us our answer. Baruch atah oitzer hamagefa. Amar Ula said, this is unbelievable. It used to be that a Shiva house was a party. Asar kaisos tiknu chachamim beveis ha'avel. They were massacred in the oval by every Suda drinks 10 kaisos of wine. It takes the edge off. Right? Shloisha, but that's the real reason. It takes the edge off. Shloisha koydem achila. 3 were before the meal. During the eating of the appetizers. During the eating of the appetizers is when you have 3 kaisos. And Rashi gives us a list of appetizers. If you ever want to become a caterer and you wanted to develop a menu, Rashi gives you a whole bunch of ideas of what would be good to eat as appetizers. Rashi says, Haparois Suda, what type of appetizers are they? Good kisnin. So possible because like fruit, like sweet fruit mixed in. Sufganen are sponges. I assume that means donuts. Iskaritin, I don't know what those are. I'll have to ask Yisrael Baruch if he has askaritin on his menu. Which each of these appetizers they were drank with a cup of wine. And then there's this shloisha b'soich achila. There will be 3 cups of wine during the meal, so we're at 6 already. Kedei lishros achila shabemeyav to help them digest the food. The arba and 4 kaises la'achar achila after achila, and this seems like it was during brachas hamazon. Echad keneged hazon. One was connected the first bracha of hazon. Echad keneged brachas haaretz, which is the second bracha of benching. Echad keneged boinei Yerushalayim, which is the third bracha of benching. Echad keneged atoy v'meitiv, which is the fourth bracha of benching. Hasifu aleim arba. And then they added another 4. So after 10 kaises, they said, let's have another 4 kaises, 14 kaises. Echad keneged chazanei here. One toast to recognize the great volunteers of the city, like the Chevra Kadisha and the other people who do good things. The Echad connected Parnasa here, and one connected the wealthy people of the city who help everybody. Let's make a toast in their honor. The Echad connected Beis Hamikdash, and the toast in honor of the Beis Hamikdash. Rashi says, "Tikno of Birchas Nichumim, Shinachemenu Hamakoim Bevinyonoi." Hashem should be menachem us. How? By building the Beis Hamikdash again. Mevilenu to be menachem us from our velo. Shonim is Abu Malach Kalmeis. And the Echad connected Rabbi Gamliel. One is a toast for Rabbi Gamliel. Why do we make a toast for Rabbi Gamliel? We'll soon see. But believe it or not, shocking as it was, his chilush yishosh in the Meshakin. Would you believe it? They would get drunk. So there would literally be a party. It ended up that the Shiva house was a drunken party. So they went back to the old days where they only had 10 kaises. Only 10 kaises, not too much. My Rabbi Gamliel, why did they make a toast in honor of Rabbi Gamliel? The Tanya we learned. The death of a loved one is devastating, but it was even more devastating that they didn't have the money to give the person the burial that everyone else got, because they used to use expensive clothing with which to bury the mace. The people would abandon their mason because they simply couldn't afford to dress them the way they needed to be dressed. Until Rabbi Gamliel came, the Nahag, no, he was logged in. He was logged in. Yeah, no. Time fear, he was actually logged on. Can you imagine? This cat no others. The Noah Kalas Batzmoy. He was Ravaz himself. Why? But you, when he died, he said, I don't need fancy begotten, it should be pishtan, which today is very expensive too. Pishtan is linen. When the Hagel called him Acharav, pishtan. After Rabbi Gamliel went pishtan, they said, if it's good for Rabbi Gamliel, it's good for us. Let's have a toast to that. Right? That's why they made a toast. towards the will, l'chaim, and lost in Leben by death. Omar Papa, but Idna Mahok Alma, we don't even use pishtan anymore, too expensive. Even with a minimal cost of canvas beged, only with a dinner. Rashi says even that would be the kriik. And they just made a levaya. They just realized they would have been bankrupted if it wasn't for William. That deserves toast. Amar Rabbi said, Pesach Pasuch Matzos. So this is a huge sugya, a big machlokes Rashi and Tosfos. But when it refers to someone who claims that the wife that he just married was not a basula. And let's see Rashi what we're discussing. If Rashi, the tiny is domim einlay. He didn't have a tiny of domim. Well, the question is, Pesach Pasuch is a little bit difficult for him to know. He's a bacher. He's getting married for the first time. He's going to know Pesach Pasuch. How do you know? How do you know exactly what it is? So Rashi, it's not tiny domim. If he said there was no dam, you don't need to be an expert. Everybody knows if she's a basula, there'll be dam. He didn't have a tiny dam. So the question is, if there was no dam, so that should be a better tiny than Pesach Pasuch. So Rashi, the goyin shehim mishpachas durkati. Durkati means dor kata, a cut off door, meaning she'ein lahem dam basula. This family did not have dam basula. So therefore, the fact that there was no dam would not have been any type of indication of whether or not she was a basula. So that's why he's tithing Pesach basula. Kidlakamon. I'm sorry. So the Gemara is going to show that in fact it's not. He doesn't know. Or they lost the shmata with which they normally check to see if there's dam. It wasn't known. But what he did know was Pesach Pasuch Matzah. It was too open, and therefore he's choshed that this woman is not a basula. So what does the Gemara say? Nemran la oishra Allah. He's not neman to divorce her without a tzuba. He's only neman that she's usher to him. Neman la oishra Allah. Even though there's no Edom on that, there cannot be any Edom. It's all dependent on his words. It's only him who experienced it. Nevertheless, at Rashi, there's a concept of Shavi alei chadicha d'isura. Legabe himself, he's believed. Shavi nafshe chadicha d'isura means I could say this piece of meat is chaylev, and even though it's not chaylev, it's going to be usher for me because of Shavi nafshe I made it for myself into a chadicha d'isura. Now, how does Shavi nafshe chadicha d'isura work? There's actually a machlokes. There's actually a lomdish shayla that some people try to attribute to different rishonim. But the lomdish shayla is: do you say it's a din of ne'emonos, or do you say it's like a nether? I'm making it usher on you. L'may nafkamina. Very simple. What if I said this piece of meat is chaylev? If it's been nether, and even if we have 100 edim, kosher edim that say that this is shumin, I'm not allowed to eat it because it's like I made a nether. But if it's a ne'emonos, I believe that I myself. Well, if there's Adam that's saying that this is for sure not chaylev, it would still be mutter. So that's the shayla declare by Shabi Nafshe Chadicha Yisur. So by him saying that my wife is a nevelas, it's answering. He's never lekabe himself, or he's answering her on himself. So he'll have to divorce her because he can no longer live with her, but he can't not give her true because of it. He's not mehemen to tell her that she's not getting her true. There are those who learn that there's a Tanya's Pesach Pesuach, even if she has them. And that's what Tosfos brings out. But there are those who learn that it's possible to have dam, and you can still say Pesach Pesuach. Rashi, this is Rashi. That dam wasn't the factor here, either because she was from the family that wouldn't have dam, or because we don't know what the situation is. Frankly, more, even if he's right, that it was Pesach Pesuach, why is that usher there? Svek Sveikahu. It's a Svek Sveika. Sovik Tachto. Maybe she was the velas before he made the kedushin, and then she's not ushered to him at all. The imtim taloimer tachta, and if in fact we know she lost her besulim after the kedushin, well, the sofik barotin. It's a sofik if she's an oinus, once again she's not ushered to him. Correct Rashi. But my mitra lay. Even if you believe him that he made a good assessment that she was novellas, it still wouldn't answer her to him. Sovek tachtov mishin is arsa zinsa after the erison. Sovek ain't tachtov elakoidim shin is arsa zinsa. And even if it was tachtov zinsa, sovek ba'anis ba'anusa shari ba'eches Yisrael, and the anusa is shari by an eches Yisrael. So we're discussing whether or not she's usher to him. Ksuba, he can't tie him mekach anyway, because he's not Neman on the zone without any aid. So this is a question only Lagabe Israel Lagabe himself. It's actually brought down. The Rishonim speak about it. Tosfos speaks about that, about mekach and the shaila if it's the it's gonna come into play later on whether or not he doesn't have to give a ksuba at all to mekach, or maybe he doesn't have to give her ksuba of the extra ksuba that a basula gets. So there's a discussion about that as well. So it's actually going back there. This question of Pesach Masuach is only for a kohen, because by a kohen is only one suffix. Was she nevelas tachto or not? If she was nevelas tachto, even if it was an oinus, she will still become usher to her husband. Or we can offer another shot. The Eishes Yisrael. We know that she became a Kudeshes when she was less than 3 years old. We know a girl who's less than 3 years old, the Via is Kenosh and Etzbala. It's like someone pokes you in the eye. It doesn't impact the Basulam. So therefore, there's no chashash, there's no possibility that this occurred before the Erison. It for sure happened after the Erison, and there's only one suffix, that is whether or not she was Zinsa or if it was an Oidus. So to Gemara, what is this great Chiddush that our Mishnah is teaching, that our Gemara is teaching us, that he's Neman La'Israel? Tanina, we learned this already in the Mishnah. What if he tells a woman, I was Mekadosh? He marries, but she says, like Kidashtani. No, you weren't. Now the question is, how this could happen when nobody's around. Kedushin only works if there's 2 Eidim. So how could this be relevant by Kedushin? So Tosfos tells us it's speaking where he said there were Eidim. I was Mekadosh in front of Eidim, but the Eidim are not here anymore. They disappeared. But the Kedushin was a good Kedushin. So I'm an Isha Kiddushtayach, and she says, no, you never married me. So the law is he mutaris bikrevo. She's mutar to marry his brother and all of his other relatives because that she's also. But who also bikrev himself? But he's not allowed to marry her sister or her mother because he claims that he's married to her. So you have a raya from here that a person's nemon l'shavi anafshech chedichid yisura. So why would this be any different than the case of Pesach Basus Matasi? Why do we need the Gemara to tell you halacha? That's pretty obvious from the Raisha that we quoted. So Gemara Ma'od Tema Hasam Devada Kimlet, where he's claiming that he married her and made a kedushin, he knows with certainty what he's saying. I made kedushin. That's where you'll believe him to answer himself. Aval maybe make him who like Kimlet. Who said he's capable of making such an assessment? This man was a single man. He's not a bucky in exactly what is a basula and what is a bahula. So maybe the reason why he doesn't answer himself is make him who like him. Maybe we don't trust him, not that he's lying, but that he's not capable of making an accurate assessment. He might have thought that it was a Pesach Masuach, but Veinike. And therefore, maybe by him saying that she should not become usher to him, the Chiddush of our Gemara is even something where he doesn't have a clear knowledge of, we still accept his testimony Lagabe Asher himself. Did Rabbi Elazar actually say that? We have another member from Rabbi Elazar. In other words, what Rashi said, the specific point we're referring to is if a man says that my wife is Mizana, would that be enough that she should become usher to him? A woman only becomes usher to her husband Ella al iskekinu yistira v'chamaisa shaya. Only through kinu yistira, which is what you find in the parsha of Soita, where he was a mekaner al pi shnei edim, and then two edim saw that she was nistira. That's the only place where the Torah tells us that a woman becomes also to her husband. But he can't just say without any precedent, nothing happened, no kinui, that she was zinsa and she would become usher on him, and Uchamaisha Shahaya. By the might of David and Bathsheba, the only time a woman becomes usher to her husband, if there was kinu and stira, just like the story of David and Bathsheba. Frankly, just like the story of David and Bathsheba, there was no kinu and stira there. The Tizbra, Maisa Shahaya, the kinu stira hava, there was no kinu and stira by David and Bathsheba. Uri didn't make kinu on his wife and David and Melech. Mi Asura. And Stamna, there she wasn't usher. There she wasn't usher. Because if she would have been usher to her Baal because of this story, she would have been usher to her Baal because of this story. And David and Melech would not have been able to marry her. So clearly there's no issue there. So that's not a kasha. That's not a kasha. This is what we mean to say. A woman will not become usher to her husband only if there's kinu ustira. Mi ma'aseh shahaya. And we have proved to that from the Maisa of David and Bathsheba that he didn't become Nesar. Why? Because there's no king of Stira. So too, a man is never Neman to Aser his wife upon him. So how could you say by Pesach Masuach? His wife becomes Aser to him because of Shavi and Nafshe. Rabbi Loza says not like that. Zok to Gemara. So to me, my sister, you don't have a king of Stira by David and Bathsheba. But later, she didn't become Aser. Would you saying that there was not usher and there was no kingdom steer? Because they're also the Olam. We're going to sushi. They're also the Olam knew there was Adam. The Gemara is going to say they're also. It's like there was Adam that there was his nus because everybody knew about it and he still didn't become Nesser. That's going to come out of the Gemara. So when we come back from kasha, the Maisi have a kasha. Why do we say by Pesach Pesach it's also there's no kinu stira? So the Gemara, the kasha is kinu stira in Pesach Pesach loy. Pesach Pesach would not be enough of a taina to create isser on him. In fact, the Gemara lutameich kinu stira in Adam loy. Would you say the same thing? Are you saying that the only way for a woman to become naseres is only through kinu stira? If two Adam came along and said someone was zinza, are you going to say there it's mutter? Of course not. Obviously, it doesn't mean Rabbi Loza didn't mean it's only through kinu stira. Allah Hachikav, do what Rabbi Loza meant. A woman would not become usher on her baal if an eid echad comes and says she's insa, unless there's two edim that said she was insa. However, if you are kinu stira, then afilu be'eid echad nami. So we're not saying the only way for a woman to become usher al baal is through kinu stira. If you don't have edim, then kinu stira also works even though there's an eid echad. Pesach Pesuach kishnei edim dami, and Pesach Pesuach is also like shnei edim. So once you're saying that kinu stira is lav dafka, it just means without edim. Well, then Pesach Pesuach, a person is done in the afterlife like shnei edim, and therefore it's not shver that by Pesach Pesuach he will also be usher on her. Okay, Gevaldik. Zog to Gemara. V'chi tema ma'aseh shahaya mipnei ma lo yashra. So if you ask by the ma'aseh of David, why didn't he become usher on her? Because they were Edom. Rashi says mipnei ma lo yashra. The bottom line of Rashi, al David, sure Edom harbe yadu. Everybody knew about this news. Tosfos doesn't like this shot. What do you mean everybody knew about this news? Zok Rashi, Zok Tosfos, the third to the bottom line. Here's the countries. We're asking why didn't David become Moshe Beersheba? Because everybody knew. They knew it. What type of cash is that? Even though everybody might have known that the David and Melech took Beersheba to his house, that's not enough to answer a woman on her husband. Because they didn't see an actual bia happen. So what's the Gemara asking that she should have become usher because her Edom? It's not like the bia was actually in public. So what's the svar of the Gemara to say that she should become usher? The nearly real parish, the entire the Pesach Pasuach Kishnei Edim Domi. If you're going to say that the time of a husband, a Pesach Pasuach is just like Shnei Edim, well, then they should have answered this woman on David HaMelech himself. Why? The David even though nobody else knew, but David knew. So David, it should be no different than David saying Pesach Pasuach. David knew there was a bia. Rabbi Bisha the tshuva, even though he did tshuva, become Makam Ikva. The mice he took her. Im Haisa Surloi.
Knowing enough is enough.
So that's how we read the last line of Tosfos. Im Haisa Surloi, like Haya Isa Tzadik Loi Chalavich. David HaMelech, knowing that there was a bia, would not have taken her as wife, and he ended up marrying her. That's the Gemara's question. Not that there's actually an Avis. That's not the time of Pesach. The time of Pesach Pasuach has nothing to do with that. The time of Pesach is he's not nemun to say that she doesn't get tshuva, that she's not a pasula. He's nemun to say that he's usher. So now he can't live with her because she's usher. That's a shalom isser. Shalom isser better. It's not a shalom dinam omelas.
She was married to you before.
And David Melch knows that she's an Ashes Isha because he was mizana with her. So it should have been also for him to remain married to her. We're going to get there in a second. But right now, the Gemara not that he was Yamza. On Ahmed Bey, the Gemara is going to get into the fact that he was Mizana. But based on what the Gemara is thinking now, that he was Mizana, how is he able to live with her? Dr. Gemara, Hasam Oynesu. Oynes Hava. You know why she didn't become Asr? Because she was an Oynes. Sure, David HaMelech was Baala Barati. But she was an Oynes, so she doesn't become Asr L'Baila, therefore she doesn't become Asr to the Boil. That's one shot. The boy Sema, he had Omar Rab Shmuel by Nachmeni Omar Rabbi Yonasan. She was mutter to her husband because of the halacha that was said by Shmuel by Nachmeni Omar Rabbi Yonasan. No, I mean her husband. I'm sorry? He wasn't dead during the Bia.
She never went back then.
He came back and then he went out again. After the Bia, he came back and David sent him out again. So he actually did come back. He actually did come back and then David sent him out again. We're going to see that in the Gemara. David forced her. Yeah. I don't know if it was a violent rape, but she was in it. Yeah. But that's also called. I'm sorry? Yeah. Dr. Gemara, why was it not? In fact, because everybody who went to Muhammad under David, all of his soldiers get creases. He would write and get creases for his wife, because Yishai was a big officer in the army of Shaul HaMelech, even before David was king. And Yishai sent David was the youngest, smallest kid, but his brothers were all warriors and soldiers. And Yishai sent David to visit his brothers in the battlefield. And he told them as follows. Yishai told David, go check out the situation with your brothers. Make sure they're okay. And get their aruvasam. What is aruvasam? My ves aruvasam tikach. Tani Rabbi Yosef, levarim hamu ravim beinay levaynah. Their marriage. Go take their marriage away. In other words, go get a get from them to their wives. And because David was sent by Yishai to do that, when he became king, he instituted for his whole army to write these gifts. So what were these gifts? Let's see Rashi. He had creatures cause of Lishtoi. She'im yamas b'Muhammad. So right away Rashi says they wrote it down on tonight that if he would die by Muhammad, he get miyom ksiva. So even Afreya, the get would be from the yom ksiva. And the Harimeis Uriah b'Muhammad. And in fact, Uriah ended up dying. So Toshis has a very big problem with Rashi because he's giving a get to the Afreya al tonight. That if I die, it's a get. Why do I need a get if I die? If I die, you're mutter l'shuk. So obviously, the only reason why we give such a get is that you should be parted from evil, right? Fred Toshis, if that's the case, then why is everybody only a woman who didn't have children? Only if the guy didn't have children and he happens to have a brother, only then she's yours. I'm sorry. But the question: why would every soldier need to do that? Only someone whose wife is at the risk of falling evil.
Somebody could be
But it doesn't say
captured.
that. So that's why Tosha says that it doesn't mean a Yamus B'Muchama. It means if he doesn't come back. Why is it a Lashon of Yamus? Because that's normally what happens to somebody. But exactly what Chaim is saying, what if we don't find him? What if we don't know that he dies? So she should remain in the Guna. So that's what the purpose of the will is. And therefore, Zok Tosha, Lav Dafka, the will has to be Chal right now. Then maybe the will was only Chal right before the Misa. Tosha says differently. Tosha tried to know. Get crazy because of Lishtoi. Tosha learned that there was no deny. He wrote a get. They wrote a full get before they went to Muhammad. They actually divorced their wives. That was the norm. So it's not. But the Gemara is going to ask that it was a suffocation. But that's how Tosha learns that it was a regular get. It doesn't say that's not. He wrote a get. Every person actually divorced their wives before they went to war. That's how Tosha learns. Okay, so let's see the Gemara. What happened over here? We also learned that by Pesach Pesach is an issue. The Sulam this is Liyam Ravi. Liyam Ravi in Liyam Chamishi Loi. Why not on Yom Chamishi? My timer Mishum Iksurei Daita. Because we're afraid that he'll calm down if there's no Yom of Bezdin right after the Biyah, and he will calm down. Therefore, we make sure that the Biyah happens the night before there's a Bezdin available. Exactly what are we concerned about? If it's a question of ksuba, if that's what this Bryce is referring to, why we need to be right before Bezdin, what's the problem if he calms down? Big deal, so he calms down. If he wants to give her money, he's allowed to give her money. There's no problem with that. Ella, the concern is we want them to go to Bezdin so that Bezdin will ask him that she's also to him. So that means he must have made a claim, right? What is the claim that this young married guy is making a Bezdin? My love, the Katan Tain is Pesach Masuach. So let's say that's exactly what the Brash is referring to. She needs to have the Biyah Wednesday night, so that if he has a Tain of Pesach Masuach, he'll go in the morning to Bezdin, and then Bezdin will say that she is now usher to him. So you have a raya that the Tain of Pesach Masuach is a good Tain to usher a woman on her husband. That's what I like. Who said that that's the Tain? Maybe the Katan Tain is done. Maybe he's saying that there was no dam. Maybe that was the situation. You don't have a raya from here that Pesach Masuach is Asher's her on him. If someone said Pesach Masuach, Nemon Afsudik Shubasa. He's even Nemon to cause her to lose her Ksuba. Amar Yosef, my Kamash Malon. What's the chiddush of that? We already know that. Now the question is, why would someone be Nemon to be Mafsir Ksuba? Just because he said Pesach Masuach, he has no proof. So Rashi tells us that the Gemara later will tell us that there's a chazaka, Ein Adam Terech Besuda Umafsida. No one's, first of all, it's the husband's responsibility to pay for the wedding. No one's going to go pay for a wedding and then fake it, lie that she's Pesach Masuach. If he didn't like her and he was going to make a billboard about her that wasn't true, he would have never made the suit in the first place. Once a guy made the suit, you know that this guy wants this marriage to survive, and therefore you believe him when he says Pesach Masuach. Amar Yosef, my Kamash Malon, what is the chiddush? And then we learned it. He shouldn't be never. It's only because there's a special chazaka that in Adam Terech Masuda Mafsida. Normally he wouldn't be never, but here, since it's such a clear thing to us that nobody would go into a wedding with plans of messing it up, therefore we believe. It's a big chiddush. We're giving him in the months of to wait him to withhold the tshuva. If someone ate by his father-in-law in Yehuda and there was no Eidim, and we know in Yehuda they are miyachet together, right? We learned earlier, and using the miyachid, that's why even by the kedushin you have to make all the sheva brachas. The halach is einei yochel litin tanis b'sulim. He could no longer come along and take Pesach b'suach. If they should be b'shachar, we assume if there was a bia, it was his bia, right? So only in Yehuda where we know they're miyachid and we can blame it on him. Haba Galil, Matitai, anywhere else where they're not miyachid, so we won't be choshid that maybe he was boiler. He could tell you that. Ulamai, Lagabi, what does he believe to say Tainus Pesulim in Galil? Ila Oishralo, if it's the Aser, the Yehuda Amai Loi. In Yehuda, if he said Pesach Besuach, he should also be Neman because of the same.
We know it's him.
I know, but if he's coming up, if he's saying Pesach Besuach, he's not saying Pesach Besuach and it was me. He's timing it wasn't me, right? So,
we believe in you. Believe in that. Yeah.
but a person, Lagabi Yisurim, a person has an amanus of Lagabi Yisurim, a person has an amanus of Shabi and Afshin. So Lagabi Mamanis, we don't believe him. Maybe he was boiler. But if he comes and says that this woman was Insa, then he's never to answer because of Shavi Yadavsh. Ella, lav lafsik Kesubos. So the tiny here, where we're saying in the little believe, must be Lagabi Kesuba. Uda Katan Taina. What was he claiming? My love, the Katan Taina is Pesach Besuach. So if he's saying Pesach Besuach, you see, he believes even to be Mavshir Kesuba. The Katan Taina is Daman. There he had a much stronger Taina. He had a Taina of them. Let's see Rashi. We have a couple of extra minutes, so Rashi gives us some extra Geshmak information. So Zok to Rashi, my love, the Katarin has Tainus Pesach B'Tzuch Matasi, and he'll be Neman. The Alpha Gav the Edom B'Dovazah, even though there are no Edom, V'loi Tainu Muchakas, and there's no Tainu Muchakas, Ella Al Laisa B'China, we're relying on his Tainu of Pesach B'Tzuch. Now, we say, he loved the push to who? If it's not the truth that she was truly Mizana, he wouldn't have ruined his whole marriage. If he hated her and he didn't want to make the Nisuin, then he would have given her a get from the Erison and he wouldn't have went through with the Nisuin. I'm sorry? Yeah, but there's a little bit how much will spend to mess her up. He won't mess her up when he's paying $20,000-$30,000. Thomas actually bursted. Yeah. Yehuda does not believe. Why? Shema Baal b'mei Erison. Maybe he was Baal leha b'mei Erison. B'shachach and he forgot. That's right. Oy heraba, or he was fooling around and he wasn't sure did he go into fooling or not. Oy heraba m'teichu basa. Instead of fooling around, he didn't think he went in far enough to break her b'sulam, and he really did. So he thinks that she was Mazana. So tomorrow, no, that's where he's not believed to be Mafsir or Ksuba. Rather, Lloyd, the Tan is Domim, Lloyd Aimalach, the Dover Sheina Yachal of if it's something that we can't confirm, Eina Neman Lahafset Ksubas. He will not be believed to be Mafsir or Ksuba. The Yukad Masnisa, the Dakinon, of Galil, Motzi Toin, we made a deek that in Galil, he can Taina Pesulim, to patter himself from paying the Ksuba. That was not the time of Pesach. Suach is the time is domin. That's when he has a clear proof that there was no dam. Uchagoyin shahoyu lahem sheshrinin shemisham shei oison v'loy nasis or no b'dovizeh. Shadis maybe it was from him. No, whenever they were together, they were sheshrinin, and if they're sheshrinin, then we have positive proof that there was no dam. V'loy ra, v'loy nasis no b'dovizeh v'loy ra the eBay the Tanya brewery. There's no chance of saying that there was a beer here before with him and the Shemata got lost. Because you have the Shishbiyin, which are the people that are in place to verify. So it's a clear verification. When there's a clear verification that she was Mazana, then she becomes Potter from the Ksuba. Okay. So there was a question of he came back, he didn't come back. So we're talking about Uri who came back, right? Her husband. So I'm pretty sure it's brought down that he did come back in the middle. Maybe it's Toshus who says that. Toshus did say that.
That's why he sent him back.
And he sent him back to the right. He sent him back in. That's right.
When his kids beat him up, right?
Exactly. Exactly. Oh, here it is. Here it is. So if we let's look at Rashi. Let's look at Rashi. No, let's look at Tosfos about an inch before the lines get wide. So v'oid the filo omer me'hayoim, even if he said me'hayoim, which means shvilu afrei yeshal yasha pirish kontras, the lav davka pirish shim yomus b'mulchama. It's lav davka if he dies b'mulchama. And lahayumas them they would make a tnai im lo yachsar milam mulchama. Right? That's what we said. The kasha was if it's about if I die, then if we know he died, what do we need to get for? Right? We know that unless it's because of Ibum, and then not everybody should have done it. So therefore, let's learn in Rashi that it doesn't mean dafka if I die. If I don't come back, like Chaim Pierce said, if I don't come back and we don't know what happened, then there's a get. The agav rihate knock at the kuntus im yomus. Why did you use the word im yomus when in fact, if we know he died, we don't need this. It's only if we don't know what happened to him. The stam most of the time, if someone doesn't come back from the Muhammad, it's because he died. If he was captured, the get should be a get as well, so she shouldn't be in the guna. When it says over here, it doesn't mean a minute before my death, because that wouldn't work over here. We need it because here he didn't die. We want to be a get, even if he didn't die, if he doesn't come back. The get over here was chal the date that it was written. In time of Frek Taisvis, Uriah came back from the Mulchama after he wrote the get. When his battle get, therefore his get should be bottled. So David and Melch in trouble. Yishlemer the Taisvis, so you masne im layachser v'soifa Mulchama. Not just from this battle if I get back. This get is valid until the end of the entire war. So even if I get back from the first battle, if I go out again, that get is still there. And all the way at the end of the war, he did not come back. But he did come back in the middle. The nichel of Firsheh had to bring prekazov. Noich loy la'adam. This is what David HaMelech said. Noich loy la'adam. Sheyivel sabik eishesish. It's better to be boiled a sabik eishesish, which is what David HaMelech did. Al yalbin pnei chaveir barabim, but he shouldn't be mavazah somebody barabim, which is what they were trying to do to David HaMelech to make fun of him. And where did we learn this halacha from? The sabik eishesish haboy. She was a sabik eishesish. The dilma yachser min al-mokom. So David was mezana with a woman who was a sabik eishesish. Yes, Lamafreya came out, it wasn't an eishesish, but at the time he was doing an avla because it was a sabik eishesish, and that we say you're better off doing that than being malbuk the chavei brachah. According to the way Tosfos learns Rashi is that as soon as she writes the get will be chal then if he doesn't come back. According to Tosfos, the get's chal then. She's divorced.
Everyone else, they have to remarry their wife when they come
Beautiful. Let's see. So let's see Tosfos. Rebbein Tam Mefarish, Koshev get Krishas Legamrei, V'lo Shum tonight. Zok Tosfos Lubrusha Kasha. Amai Kari Sabik Eishesish. Why is it a Sabik Eishesish? Oh, have a Grusha Gemura. She's a regular divorced woman, and when she comes back from the war, they make a whole bunch of chasnas again. Caterers are very happy. It's called renewing the vows. Well, every time he gives her a get, he has to remarry her. I don't know how Kohanim work.
they can only divorce their wife once.
No, you can divorce her as many times you want to take her back, as long as she doesn't marry anybody in between. No, you can do as many times you want. Yeah. Why is it called? The curry lays Suffolk Eishish. Why is it called the Suffolk Eishish? She's a Vada Migoreshes. Even though they gave their wife Gittin, they didn't publicize it. You know why? If everybody knows I divorced my wife, if someone wanted my wife, someone had the hearts for my wife, he'll jump on her. Now I got you, because now you're a Migoreshes. So therefore, even though it was done very quietly, and therefore people won't think she's available, right? Imagine if everybody knows that all the women are available, so then who knows? People are going to start railing after these women. So therefore, they kept it quiet. It's like when I was once in Florida,